Hey people, you're with Got That Funk, and I just want to ask the question, are you pro-life or are you pro-choice? Now, this is a video response to the brand new video by CDK007 called Are You Pro-Life? And without rehashing the points that he's made in his video, I would just recommend you to go down there and click on it. It's one of the best videos on this subject that I've ever seen. Now, my own personal views, some of which I've already aired on YouTube, but that was quite a long time ago, and I think under the current circumstances, it does bear repeating. My own opinion is the only pregnancy that I have a right to have any say in whatsoever would be if it was my child in the womb that was in question, in which case I would expect the mother of that child to at least seek out my opinion. Obviously, though, because she has to carry the child and bear the child, I would personally have to defer to her wishes, whether they were for or against having the child. But I certainly would expect my wishes to be considered. Now, that would be if it was my child in question. If it's not my child in question, what the hell right do I have to tell someone else how they should or should not reproduce? I don't think I have the right to tell someone else that. I certainly don't think society has the right to tell someone else what they should or shouldn't do with their reproduction. And most definitely, the government has no say, or should have no say, in whether or not someone reproduces. Now, people who are pro-life, or as I prefer to say, anti-abortion, seem to think that the government does have the right to intervene and prevent people from having abortions in almost all circumstances. But I would argue this. What's the ethical difference between not allowing abortions ever? What's the difference between that, ethically speaking, and forcing people to have abortions, which is what happens in China? Forced abortions, which go on in China, are universally decried around the world as an abuse of human rights, and quite rightly so. But it seems to me an equal abuse of human rights to force people to have babies that they don't want, possibly can't afford, possibly can't look after. So I don't really understand uh, how the people can balance this sort of ethical disparity there. Also, a lot of people on the anti-abortion side of this argument would call themselves, from a political point of view, conservatives. Conservatives want government to stay the hell out of your life. So isn't it rather ironic that you don't mind government in a uterus, but you want them to leave you alone with your taxes? That's a bit wrong, don't you think? I mean, surely if you want government out of your life, that has got to include your reproduction. So there's a lot of inconsistency there as well. And last but not least, an awful lot of people who would describe themselves as pro-life, but I'll say anti-abortionists, are anti-abortionists because of their religious or spiritual views. And they view human life as sacred, or so they say, and therefore every embryo has the right to come to term and become a human being. Well, I have so many disagreements with that I really don't want to list them all here. But what I will say is, if you really think that it's God's plan that every single embryo that gets fertilized becomes a human being, what happened? Where does God's plan fit into stillborn children or miscarriages? Um, Also, if everything that happens according to God's plan, well, then that surely must include abortions. Dr. George Tiller, who was recently killed because he was an abortion practitioner, um, was killed. And some of the logic of some of the people who do this, I've read some comments on other videos, and they say, oh, well, the execution of this man or the murder of this man has saved thousands of lives because now thousands of babies will be born who might not have been born before. That is a bizarre, that is murderer logic. Only murderers and people who think like murderers can think like that. Um, the bottom line, though, is if you really believe God has a plan, then you can't intervene with it. Whether it's Dr. George Tiller or the mother of a baby who is deciding to have it, that's according to God's plan. If she decides to have an abortion, again, that's got to be God's plan. Because if you can interfere with God's plan, either as a pregnant woman or as a doctor, well, then you're obviously showing that you're more powerful than God, right? And since that can't be the case, either God doesn't have a plan or God plans every abortion. Either way, abortion should be legal. It should be available legally. I hate to do this, but I'm going to quote Bill Clinton. The only thing government should have to do with abortion is to take whatever steps is necessary to make it safe, legal, and rare.